Welcome to Analyze This for Power BI. This video is part of a series that helps to make sense of the myriad of options in Microsoft's business intelligence platform. In this video, we discuss Power BI Datamarts, the last of our data management components. Now, at the time of this recording, which is March of 2023, Datamarts were still in preview and had been for a while. So there are a few things we don't know yet, but we do know enough to understand how to plan for using Datamarts. And Datamarts really will help us solve some issues very elegantly. So let's get going. First up, Datamart is a new data hosting option that is distinctly different from datasets and data flows that we learned about in previous videos. Datamarts specifically don't consume Power BI storage. They can grow much larger than a Power BI dataset. They can even be accessed from outside of Power BI, which is very interesting. And they have the performance of a SQL Server database. And that's because a Datamart is actually an Azure SQL database. Yep, a Power BI Datamart is a read-only Azure SQL database deployment that is provisioned and controlled by the Power BI service, and that's the difference. So Datamart is not a single thing, but a combination of Power BI components and Azure services that all work together. And here's how it works. First, you build a Power Query query, and that creates a Power BI data flow. Then the service automatically creates a database, an Azure SQL database, and points the data flow to that database. Next, the service creates a Power BI dataset that matches the schema of the Azure SQL database. And that is critical because our users will access the Power BI dataset to create reports that query against the Datamart. Okay, that dataset acts as the flow through in order to get to our Datamart. And finally, the service then controls the data flow so that it can update the database, and it maintains a connection between your Power BI dataset and the Azure SQL database. So basically, Datamart hides all the complexity of building out this kind of environment. And it also uses Power BI's data governance and security model, which is also wonderful and hard to do if you're doing it on your own. Now, it's not really a replacement for a full-fledged Datamart that we would use across an entire organization. Okay, this is designed for Power BI users who are proficient in Power Query, but maybe not in SQL Server, but they want to use SQL Server. Or for maybe special departmental situations where you need a small Datamart just for specific needs. Or it could be in a situation where you have data sets in Power BI that are getting quite large and you need them to grow beyond Power BI's data set limit, and so this is a good solution for that. Or it could be in a situation where you want a data set or a small Datamart that needs to be accessed by Power BI users, but also by people outside of Power BI. Because the Datamart is really an Azure SQL database, which means we can access it outside of Power BI directly through Azure SQL using normal SQL Server connections. Okay, so there are some things we don't know yet that we should know sometime in 2023. Like, what's the cost? Okay, right now it's free, but it won't always be that way. Azure SQL Database has its own cost. How is it licensed? Can we use Azure Hybrid Benefit like we do with a regular SQL Server coming into Azure? Can we scale it up? In other words, can we have a low-cost Datamart for small deployments and then scale up to a larger Datamart for larger requirements? Will it support import mode? Okay, because right now, the Power BI dataset that we use to query the Datamart only queries it through direct query. And that means we're always getting live data, and it could introduce some latency, and it might not always be necessary. So it would be nice if we could import some of that into our Power BI data set as opposed to always having to do a direct query on it. Now, I think the real value of Datamarts is going to be determined by the answer to those questions. And I hope they're nice answers, because for me, this is a really nice feature for the right situation. And it could help us build some very sophisticated deployments. Okay, I hope that clears up what Datamarts are and how they fit in a Power BI deployment and what we still don't know. Now, the video series can be viewed in any order, but if you need a recommendation, I suggest you go back and watch the Power BI Data Management or the Power BI Data Flows video next if you haven't already.